Hi, my name is Diane Robinson. I am a wildlife biologist with the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources, and I am here with Yvonne.
Yvonne Wallace-Blane. I'm co-founder of Fellow Mortals Wildlife Hospital. We're so excited to have you with us today.
Yeah, thank you very much for having us. So we're here today to talk about baby animals and about keeping wildlife wild. So the DNR initiated a program in the last couple of years called Keep Wildlife Wild. You can go on the DNR website to look up some of the information that we have about that specific program. Just go on the DNR website and type in Keep Wildlife Wild. Basically, the general premise behind it is that we want as many people as possible out there to know about baby animals, some of the really cool adaptations that baby animals have in order to survive in the wild, and then if you do find an animal that may be sick or injured or orphaned, what you should do in that situation. And that's again why we're here with Yvonne to talk about wildlife rehabilitation and why they are definitely the people to go to in those situations. I think the big thing for everyone to remember is that if you find an animal that might need to be taken care of, the first thing to do is contact a professional. Contact the DNR, contact a wildlife rehabilitator like Yvonne or her crew so that they can tell you exactly what to expect that's normal and what might be something to give you a clue that maybe that animal does need to be taken care of.
Yeah, thank you very much, Diane. So we are very busy this time of year. Our busy season goes for about 4 months in the summer, and I believe we have about 400 animals in care right now. We are very careful to triage our phone calls, which is why we rely on people calling before they bring an animal to the hospital, because so many of the calls have to do with educating about natural history, and the last thing we want to do is take a baby away from its mom. We always explain to people that is our purpose in life, is to raise those babies, and I can't imagine what it must be like to go back to feed your baby and find that it's not there anymore. We totally understand that people are concerned about wildlife and nervous sometimes about leaving them where they find them, but that's why we're here. We have experience in what works. We know what we've been able to do putting animals back, and we've worked with about 50,000 animals in the over 30 years that we've been rehabilitating.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, and so today we really specifically want to talk about fawns. This is the time of year that we're starting to see whitetail fawns drop. I know you guys have already received a lot of phone calls. We've received a lot of phone calls too. People just generally excited about seeing fawns out in the landscape, but then also having people who are concerned because they see a fawn without a mom. And I think it's important to recognize again, like Yvonne mentioned with the natural history, that if you see a fawn all by itself, chances are really good that mom is near or going to be coming back soon. And just because you see a fawn by itself does not mean that it's in danger in any way, shape, or form.
No, people often see these tiny, fragile babies and think that they are orphaned and worry about them. And just understanding some of the natural history, the fact that the babies don't have any body odor, they can't be found by the predators as long as we haven't handled them, that mom's keeping them clean, the fact that they're camouflaged so well, knowing that mom doesn't stay with the baby and comes and visits them to feed, and if there are twins or triplets, they're not going to be together. I think that's one of the most common misperceptions, is they see the baby, don't see the mom, and thinks that, people think that somehow they've been separated. And we, I'm sure, have already kept out 20 fawns this year, and we had another 6 calls yesterday. Of the fawns that are here with us now, though, approximately half were what we call kidnapped, and that's because people didn't call first, didn't have the information. We know they're well-meaning, very good people that care about these babies, but there is limited space available for fawn rehabilitation, very few fawn rehabilitators in the state, and so we need to make sure that we have room if we have the truly injured animals coming to us.
Yeah, I think what's important too, so down here, we're in the Lake Geneva area right now, and this is in an area where there's a lot of people, but there's also a lot of white-tailed deer out there. So just because you see a fawn and it might be in your garden, or it might be out laying in the middle of your yard, or it might even be near the road that runs through your subdivision or something like that. That in and of itself doesn't mean that that fawn is in danger, and I think that's the really important thing that you can relay to people when you have those conversations with them over the phone.
Yes, that's correct. I mean, they'll be lying on a porch or right next to the road, and there are occasions where we will sometimes go out and move an animal if it's in immediate danger, but for the most part, we just leave those babies alone, and mom does take care of them. But that's why we're here 7 days a week. We can't answer the phone in the middle of the night, but hang tight, leave a message. We don't, rehabilitators aren't paid for by your taxes, and so you need to be patient with us as we meet the needs of the community.
Yep, absolutely. And I think what's important to remember too is that mom does know best. So even if you don't think that that fawn should be near the road or on your porch, giving it time and space. If you contact a wildlife rehabilitator and they deem it appropriate that baby maybe needs to be moved, then they can deal with that. But remember, they're the professionals. I'm a wildlife biologist. I've been trained in wildlife biology, but I would still not move a fawn or baby rabbits or a bird nest or anything like that unless I talk to a wildlife rehabilitator first, because they are the ones who've been trained in how to take care of those animals. I'm the one who's got experience in other aspects of wildlife biology.
It's a real partnership, Diane, and we really appreciate working with the department in that way. And the other thing I would say for people to remember is that when these babies are small and they cannot do any damage to someone, that's one thing, but as rehabilitators, our whole purpose is to raise animals to go back to the environment so that you don't know they were ever in human care. And especially with deer can be dangerous if they are raised improperly and they become habituated to people. So that's something that we look at with all of the animals we work with. And for us, we feel it's a real privilege to be helping wildlife, but we don't do it for our own benefit. It really is, it's a profession, and it's all about respecting the wildlife enough to put them back where they belong.
Yeah, that's really great. It's really great to see you guys out there and doing all the amazing things that you guys do.
Thank you.
So again, my name is Diane Robinson. I'm a wildlife biologist with the Department of Natural Resources.
Yvonne, Wallace-Blane, Fellow Mortals Wildlife Hospital.
And Yvonne had a really great segue in there about talking about the fawns and how it's really important to make sure that they're not habituated when they're going through wildlife rehabilitation. So with that, I think maybe we can move the video over a little bit. We do have some of those fawns that Yvonne was talking about before that we can go and check out.
I'll take you back.
Excellent, thank you.
We're walking through one of the kitchens into another food preparation area. We have, like I said, about 450 animals, I think, here now. Going to the bird nursery.
So as you guys can hear, there's a whole bunch of birds in here. So it's right around feeding time. And we can look at these a little bit later, but we can check out the fawns as well.
So this is Karen McKenzie. She's on staff at Fellow Mortals, and she is our primary fawn caregiver. She has been for the last few years. By a car, and another one that lost its mother. But they've just been fed, and they have to be stimulated to go to the bathroom like they would be by the mother. And now they're getting a little bit of time to stretch their legs, which they need in between after every feeding. And they also are getting a chance to have some dirt, which is really important to keeping their guts working properly. They really like to come out and eat that. We're working on a new part of the hospital that has a fawn neonatal care unit. But in the meantime, this is a restricted. And then, like I said, we had one that was actually born when the mother was hit and the sibling was killed, and another that was found next to its dead mother.
And those are situations that
Yes,
obviously
absolutely.
in that situation it's good to contact
Yes.
a wildlife rehabilitator. You guys aren't the only wildlife rehabilitator in the state. There's
No.
a lot of others. If you go on the DNR webpage, you can go on the DNR webpage and type in rehab. You can hear the birds singing in the background. You can type in rehab and you can find out the closest wildlife rehabilitator near you. Even if you don't have one super close to you, it's still really good to contact someone, regardless of how close they are, just to help you understand what's going on with that situation, maybe who the best
right away, but an animal that hasn't been fed, that's starving, that can't digest the food, everything shuts down, and so an animal that we could save, we lose because it has been fed.
Yeah. And again, that's one of those things that people, even in your well-meaning care for these animals, you might not necessarily know the best thing to do. And again, as a wildlife biologist, I know animals, I know what they eat, but I don't know what baby animals eat, and I don't know, all of those specifics that you guys do, which is why it's really important to contact a professional. So I think that's really important.
I think warmth is really misunderstood because people don't understand baby.
And they try to give as much space to all of the animals as well when they're out there.
These are our littlest babies. We have a couple of house finches here in this nest on the end. We also have many injured birds that are here right now too. We've got some that have hit windows, so I'm not going to go down too far that way. The two birds on the end are interesting because those are two of our foster parents. The red-winged blackbird is 18 this year.
Okay.
And the oriole is 15, and so when we get a baby bird and we put it in with those birds, they get the opportunity to raise them.
Interesting. And that's the really important thing. As a wildlife rehabilitator, one of the things that you guys do is try to keep as minimal human contact as possible. You don't want these animals to become habituated to people, because if they do become habituated to people, the same situation as if you're living in a city and you feed animals when you're in the city, they can become habituated to people. If you're feeding, sorry.
Can you guys explain what habituated?
Oh, sure. Yeah, sorry. So that's one of those biology buzzwords that a lot of times wildlife biologists or wildlife professionals will throw around. So habituation basically just means that an animal is overly comfortable with people. So animals in general are supposed to be wary of people, are supposed to stay away from people. But in our urban areas, in our cities where they see people a lot of times, they become overly comfortable with people, and especially within a wildlife rehabilitation situation where they're in such close proximity to people, you really want to make sure that they don't become habituated, that they don't become comfortable with people.
There's a level of habituation that occurs just because the animals see us as providing food, so that's why we limit caregivers. And also when we don't release them to public parks. All of our release sites are private property where we have permission to do that. And then with birds, of course, we are very concerned with imprinting and improper imprinting, which is why we use fosters, because we can't possibly model the behaviors that a baby crow needs to see or a goose.
Yeah, maybe check and see if there's any more over there.
Yes,
Sure. Yeah.
So what are we waiting for in the room? What's the big reveal here?
So what we're waiting for is we want to try and give you guys a chance to actually see some of these fawns. Obviously, when someone finds a young fawn and they're concerned that it may or may not be in danger, the same thing with any other animal. They're cute. And so we wanted to make sure that you guys kind of got the chance to see some of those animals and see too some of their behavior in the room, and show that there isn't a lot of human contact, and that they are by all rights still acting like fawns, like wild animals, moving around in there and having a good time.
And it's important too that we don't try to rush the timeline. We want to keep them kind of on that same schedule that they would be anyway. We're just here observing, so stay with us, and we'll give you a look at some fawns here pretty soon.
Yeah, and again, that's the really important thing, that we're here. Fellow Mortals has been kind enough to allow us to be on site. This isn't something that normally happens, so this is kind of a really unique opportunity that you have to see some of the inner workings of the wildlife rehabilitation facilities that we have within Wisconsin, and see some of the great things that they do. And we just want to give you as many opportunities to see the cool stuff as possible.
She has just finished feeding, so they should be coming out. If you want to get in this area, and they should be coming out to be with you soon. Hi, this is Yvonne. I'm outside the window with you watching the fawns. It's been so great to see these little guys get strong after they came to us, some of them in pretty rough shape. So this time that they are allowed to play after feeding is so important to keep them strong, and so that they can learn the interactions with each other. These babies that are raised together will be with each other until they're released. Also, they get a chance to get some of the browse, to get a start on the browse. We pull the grasses, and they're eating dirt. It's also very important for minerals, and it keeps everything functioning properly. One of the things that we worry about with babies is diarrhea if they don't get a proper diet. And these little ones, you can see that they're all clean, just like they would be if mom was taking care of them. Pretty soon, they will be moving outside to the first fawn habitat, and they will have more access to browse. They'll still have a protected shelter because they're still pretty little. If they were predators, they would be in danger. And then gradually, as they grow and as time goes on, they get larger and larger habitats. And we wean them onto a bottle rack as soon as possible so that they don't associate humans with feeding for any longer than necessary. But they're very curious, and it's very important that they have each other to interact with and not people, because like any animal, fawns need companionship, and we want that to be their own kind.
So we'll go back this way and get out of the loud bird noises. So that was pretty cool, right? It was worth the wait to see the fawns bouncing around and frolicking and whatnot. So for anyone who came in just during the fawn part or just came in recently, my name is Diane Robinson. I'm a wildlife biologist with the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources. We're here at Fellow Mortals Wildlife Hospital in Lake Geneva. We're waiting for the wildlife rehabilitators. They're finishing up taking care of the fawns in the back, and they'll be coming in here shortly. And we just kind of wanted to finish up and talk a little bit about some of the situations that wildlife rehabilitators kind of deal with. So if you want to introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Karen McKenzie. I'm one of the wildlife rehabilitators here at Fellow Mortals. I just finished feeding 8 of our deer.
Okay.
So yeah, we're getting daily calls about fawns that people believe are orphaned, and generally they are not, as I'm sure you guys have already been talking about.
Which isn't a bad thing to bring up.
Yes,
again.
yes.
Yep.
And so, but one of the ones last week, it was an elderly gentleman, and I ended up actually going out. The fawn was in a shed, and what had happened is he had pulled out his lawnmower. It frightened the fawn from wherever she was hiding in the long grass, and she'd gone into his shed, and he was really concerned about her. And he didn't want to keep her there. He cared very much about animals, but he was afraid she might get hit on the road, or that a predator would get her, or that mom wouldn't come back. And so I took her out of the shed, I checked her over, she was in perfect health, and I nestled her down in some long grass, and I talked the gentleman through, what to look for. And that was about 5 o'clock, and 2 hours later he gave us a call to let us know that he had watched mum come to the yard. She had not only fed baby, but he had the great joy of getting to watch her cleaning up the baby, and then they wandered around a little bit. Mum took her across the road to another yard and off into the woods. So it was a very happy ending.
That's excellent. It's really exciting to hear about those success stories. I know you guys get a lot of phone calls from people, and they're really concerned because not everyone necessarily understands that seeing a fawn by itself is something to be concerned about. And I think it's really important too that individual, he called you guys right away to talk about something happened, and he wanted to make sure that the fawn was okay.
Absolutely.
And it sounds like the fawn was just fine.
Absolutely. And when we can get right in there at the start of the situation, we can almost always keep the baby with mum unless something has indeed happened to mum, which is much rarer than people realise.
Yep.
Is there a most common question that you think you get that might be helpful for people to hear?
I think most people just assume when they see this teeny tiny little fawn, particularly the ones who are less than a week and they're not that great on their 4 legs yet, they assume that they've been abandoned. Almost all of the calls start like that. There's a little fawn that's laying in the middle of my lawn, has been abandoned, because they don't know that natural history aspect of it.
Yeah.
That this is exactly what mum does. You know, this is how they stay safe.
And that's the really cool thing that maybe not everyone understands about white-tailed deer, is that those first couple of weeks when that fawn is brand new, it can't move around with mom, it can't follow mom around.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
mom puts it in one spot. It's got those spots on it, so it can be really well camouflaged. It doesn't even have a scent, so that the predators can't find it. So if it did stick around with mom, if anything, it would be even more likely to be found by a predator because it would have her scent. And so that's an adaptation that's really neat, because that fawn can sit totally by itself for the vast majority of the day,
Yes.
with just a few check-ins by mom. And so it's something that we're not comfortable with, because that's obviously not how we raise our
Yes,
children.
yes.
But that's still something that wild animals are really well adapted to. You know, we didn't talk about a lot of other animals, but it's the same case with cottontail rabbits. You know, mom has a nest of baby bunnies, and she really only checks on that nest, you know, a few times a day. So if you find a bunny nest and no mom's around, that's normal. That's a good
yes.
thing. That means everything's
And
fine.
those again are one of the big ones that people, very well-meaning people, will cause a problem for those babies by removing them, because they assume there's no mum, they're so tiny, how could they possibly be just left here? And again, it is just the normal natural history of them.
Exactly, which is really amazing to see exactly how well those animals can survive. And I think that's the important thing too, is that if you do see a situation like the gentleman who called you,
Yes.
don't do something with the animal. Contact a professional. Contact the Wildlife Department or the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources. Contact a wildlife rehabilitator near you. If you go on the DNR website, we've got information on our Keep Wildlife Wild webpage that has a lot of information about some of those really cool natural history adaptations for different animals. So if you go on the DNR website, just type in Keep Wildlife Wild into the search box. Also, if you go on the DNR website, type in Rehab, R-E-H-A-B. That's got all of our wildlife rehabilitators across the state. So even if you don't necessarily have a wildlife rehabilitator that's in the town next door to yours, call someone who's near you and talk to them about what you have on the landscape and whether or not that's normal behavior. I think that's really important.
And be proactive, check out that website now and find out who is closest to you, so that you know for if you do find an animal in the future, you're good to go.
Yeah, that's an amazing idea. So with that, I guess we can kind of wrap it up. My name is Diane Robinson. Again, I'm a wildlife biologist with the Department of Natural Resources.
Karen McKenzie, wildlife rehabilitator at Fellow Mortals Wildlife Hospital.
And Fellow Mortals has been kind enough to allow the DNR to come here and show us some really cool footage for you guys. So I hope you guys learned something, and thank you very much.